We expect to make this company to pay $10 a share in dividends over infinite amount of time, and my discount rate is 12%. So 10 divided by 12% is basically $80. Okay, or if it's 10%, it's $100. All we're doing is, if I know the value, if I know the price, which we equate to be value in equilibrium, I just solve for the required rate of return. So that part is easy. Now, required rate of return on debt capital, sometimes, and I'm going to call this RD, or cost of debt. Technically speaking, I'm going to call this pre-tax cost of debt, because I have not yet incorporated the roll-up taxes. What we want to do, we're going to eventually use the after-tax cost of debt. That's because that's the actual cost of the company. If I have $50 million worth of interest payments on a $200 million of income before interest and taxes, then I can deduct that 50 million. My taxable income becomes 150, so I'll pay less. So my effective cost to me is less. And we're going to find out, we're going to figure out how to do that. But after tax cost of debt is the pre-tax cost of debt times 1 minus tax rate. And the tax rate obviously is going to differ among companies, even though there's a statutory number for corporate taxes. It varies because of a lot of reasons. I mean, federal is the same for everybody. I think it's 22%, if I'm not mistaken. But the state corporate income tax rates differ. California is 12%, Tennessee 0. Okay, Kentucky, it's a small number. I think 3 or 4, something like that. In fact, Kentucky is even thinking about making that 0. At least personal income, they're thinking about making that 0. But even if you're in the same state, you could, what we call tax arbitrage. For example, Apple has its official headquarters in Ireland. Do you know why? Because the corporate income tax in Ireland is only 10%. In fact, if you look at Apple, they pay 0 in federal taxes. 0. Because they don't even pay sales tax. Why? Because they book all their sales out of Ireland. So Apple's tax burden is a lot less compared to a company like, I don't know, Chevron, something like that. But either way, the cost of common equity and cost of preferred equity are effectively not affected by tax rates, so we want to make them talk. To figure out cost of debt, we can have two approaches. For simplicity, assume that if a firm has a bond issue, it has only one such issue. I mean, in practice, you have multiple bond issues. You would estimate the cost of debt for all of them and do a weighted average. But To make it simple, assume there is just one. If the market for the existing bond is liquid enough, use the yield to maturity on the bond as the pre-tax cost of debt. We're not interested in, uh, for example, at the time you may have issued this bond, that is a 5% coupon bond, and at the time you have issued it, it was basically had a 5% yield to maturity. But this may have been 3 years ago. Now it's less or more because market changes. So yield to maturity is the market interest rate on your existing debt. Let's do an example. Suppose you have a bond, 4.5% coupon rate, quarterly coupons, 23 years left to maturity, and currently trades at 110% of face value. For this, we will use the bond template in solver mode, i.e. green light, and use yield to maturity as your unknown. Let's go ahead and actually do that. Our bond value template. Okay. The face value 2, coupon rate 4.5. I'll leave the yield to maturity as it is. It's quarterly, so coupon frequency is 4, 23 years to maturity. My target is 110 because it's trading at 110% of the face value. Double click on this to make it green light. As you know, it automatically solves the yield to maturity for you. 347.61. By the way, you can even use it, find it using the rate function. There's actually an Excel function. Let me remember the arguments. Actually, let's do it here ourselves. The first argument is number of periods, 92. Payment is the coupon amount. PV is 110. FE is face value. Of course, I need to make one of these negative. and I need to multiply it by 4. Let me see. That shouldn't have been the number. Oh, you're not telling me that I didn't use the right viewpoint rate. Yield to maturity. Yeah, it does need to be 2.88%. So rate function can also do that for you. I put that negative because it's like debits and uh, times frequency.